Let us start, Ranjit sir.
Okay. Today, that means 26th November, a landmark day in the history of India on which the people of India adopted and gave to ourselves the Constitution. Indian Constitution is one of the largest written constitution in the world which tries to maintain a unique character. So, as part the observation of Constitution Day, Faculty Forum of School of Distance Education conducting this webinar on democracy. Democracy is considered as the ideal form of government, but its nature is varied on the basis of the nature of society, economy, and of course, nature of the ruling party. So our topic, right-wing politics and challenges to democracy, evaluates the experiences of India and US. This webinar session will be inaugurated by the Controller of Examination, University of Calicut, Dr. C.C. Babau. With all respect, we welcome you, sir. And this session is presiding by Dr. V.K. Subramanian, sir, Director, School of Distance Education, and he is the energy behind the faculty forum, and he always motivates us to conduct this kind of programs. With all respect, we welcome you, sir. As a resource person to this webinar, we got an eminent personality, Professor Michael Sonnleitner from Portland Community College, U.S.A., and one of the elected trustees of PCC College Board of Directors. And the interesting factor regarding Michael sir is his research topic, soul force and social change, reference to the ideas of M.K. Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And he was in Kerala during 2009 and 10 as part of his Fulbright scholarship, and he taught in different departments of political science in different colleges in Kerala. So it's our honor, sir. With all respect, we welcome Michael Sonnleitner, Professor Michael Sonnleitner, to this webinar. Welcome, sir. And next, I would like to welcome our syndicate members, Eugene Morley, sir, and Hanifa, sir, to this webinar. Welcome, Eugene, sir, and welcome, Hanifa, sir. And next, our former director of School of Distance Education and the present director of IQAC, Dr. Shivadasan, sir, and who has come to facilitate this webinar. We, with all respect, welcome you, sir. And now the teachers, research scholars, and students who came to participate in this webinar, we welcome you all and expect active participation in our discussion session. Thank you. And I invite Dr. Subramanian, sir, to preside over this meeting.
Thank you, Ranjit. Our respected Controller of Examination, Calicut University, Dr. C.C. Babau, who is inaugurating our webinar today. Our most respected Professor, Dr. Michael Warren Sonnleitner, retired Professor, Portland Community College, United States of America. A respected syndicate member, Mr. K.K. Hanifa. A respected Mr. Eugene Morley, Convener Standing Committee of Syndicate for Distance Education, Calicut University. A respected Professor Shivadasan P., Director, IQAC, University of Calicut. And my dear teachers and employees of the university, and the distance education, and my dear students who are participating in this webinar, and ladies and gentlemen. As the director of School of Distance Education, I am really feeling peerless pleasure today that we are blessed with the presence of Professor Dr. Michael Warren Sonnleitner, who is going to deliver the theme of right-wing politics and challenges to democracy, experience of India and US. The title of the webinar selected for today, this is a title. We are very much proud of you, sir, in your presence, for your consent to address us. I really proud of our Department of Politics, School of Distance Education, Dr. Ranjit, who took initiation to arrange the webinar under the banner of Faculty Forum, School of Distance Education. Our controller of examination, Dr. C.C. Babau, who is inaugurating the event, always associated with the School of Distance Education. Actually, he is very busy with the schedule of examination of the biggest university of Kerala, but he gave consent to inaugurate the program with very pleasure. And our syndicate members who are always with us for the prosperous of School of Distance Education, and Dr. P. Shivadasan, Dr. P. Shivadasan, former director and of SDE, School of Distance Education, and now he's discharging the duties of IQAC. Will felicitate the function. I'm very happy today. My dear friends, today India is under a nationwide strike called by opposition parties and the lovers of human rights. Actually, I am very much pleased with this day, because in our biggest democracy, our country is the biggest democratic country. Our country is now working for the democracy of the people and the country. We are actually, our rights are protecting. We are striking for the rights of the people, rights of poor people, our rights. We are striking today. The speciality, it's a coincidence. This day itself, we got the same subject for the webinar. My dear friends, we are conducting this webinar to observe a historic and prideful day, that is November 26th, on which day our constitution is adopted by we, the people of India. Indian constitution provided a democratic form of government, as you know. We know that our democracy is not only a form of government, but also a social condition and a way of life where the dignity of every individual is respected. It is the only form of government where human rights occupy prominent place in political life of the state. While evaluating the current trends in world democratic status, there's a tendency for a leaning towards right-wing politics. It protects the conservative ideas and stand for neoliberal economic policies. In this situation, sometimes state forgets about the downtrodden of our society. and never address the issue of inequality and justice. Along with this, it has many socio-economic and political impacts. I expect all these will come to our today's webinar discussion. Here we are discussing the topic from the experience of India and United States of America. In recent years, in view of rightist politics, these two states got attention of the world. As the director of School of Distance Education, Calicut University, I welcome Professor Michael Warren, Sonnleitner, and all of us waiting for your thoughts, please. And I expect active participation of teachers, research scholars, students in our discussion. I'm concluding my presidential address with these words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, I invite Dr. C.C. Babau, Controller of Examination, University of Calicut, for his inaugural address. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ranjit. Good morning, all of you. Is it audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Audible. Thank you.
Very clear, sir. No problem.
Warm good morning, all of you, my dear friends. Erudite Professor Dr. Michael Warren, the respected chair of the session, Dr. Subramanian sir, my friend Dr. Shivadasan, and syndicate member Sri KK Hanifa, and my friend Eugene Morelli, member syndicate, Mr. Ranjit, coordinator of this program, all the faculty members, students, and my dear friends. It's a very a great moment in my life. Personally, it's a great moment in my life to inaugurate a very serious and erudite program like this. I first of all, I'm thanked all the students, director, all the coordinator for inviting me to attend this serious program and make a few words by inaugurating this session. With all privilege, I took this right to take this opportunity to formally inaugurate this. I declare this session is inaugurated. Thank you all. Dear friends, as we know, democracy is the noble form of government. The nobility we are attributing to democracy not only to a political institution or a political agenda or a political scheme, but it embodies, or the democracy itself trying to embody some values. It's a form of life, a democratic way of life, which imbibing or embodying some values to cherish and flourish up. So the democracy trying to embody some values when all the rights, equality, and liberty of all people have to be protected. Basic quality of democracy, I think it is the concern for others. Democracy consider the other, or which liberate the individual from their rigid selfish domains and place the individuals in a broad spectrum where all the people have equal space and equal footings with all freedom, liberty, and there will be a situation where all the people have their own spaces to branch out and flourish their life as they wishes. It will fruitful only when the democracy, the political system, fruitful only when the dignity of the people, dignity of all the people have to be protected, not from the top layers of the society, but even in the bottom layers. The people who are standing in the level playing or the level playing field, or even in the marginalized sections of their people. The rights of all people have to be protected, barring all walks of life. That means all the people who are residing in a society, in a community, the rights and liberty of the people will be protected by it. It provides a situation to protect. See, the system all over the world, democratic system existing all over the world, have been witnessed ups and downs in its growing path. In the India's case too, it's not different from other parts of the other. It has facing some ups and falls or some type of pitfalls, which will questioning the basic values that promised by our constitution. The recent development even in India, the recent development in India, or the recent development or the deviations deviation taken place in the path of political life, have been witnessing, which will questions the basic values impounded by or compounded by Indian constitution, the basic value, the constitutional morality, which questions the constitutional morality, equality, and liberty. And these some changes taken place in the political scenario is questioning the basic values provided by our constitutions. So all the people do have their own values, their own liberty, their own thoughts. And the Indian constitution also provides the right for sedition. There is ample space for all the people who are like to deviate from the, they have the full right to express their own ideas without any prevention or any prohibitions. They have the full freedom. But the recent development is actually prohibits and threatening the right of the people to make a sedition against any opinion. So the tolerance is questioning, the equality is questioning, the liberty is questioning. At the same time, the secularism, secular fabric of constitution is also threatening nowadays. And we, the people of Kerala, especially the people of Kerala, they are living with a very harmonious way, and they are harmonic. Then barring from all other discriminations, we are all trying to live in a beautiful way. But that life forms itself is questioning the recent development. It's not the case of, it's not confining to the case of Indian political scenario. All over the world have been. But even in the midst of all these things, there will be a glare. Some glare of hope and a glare of confidence, a glare of the new changes have been shown in different economies or different states all over the world. That is witnessing the recent development or recent changes taken place in the U.S. Community or the U.S. state through their voting rights and right to vote in there. So democracy is a place, and we have to protect the democratic values, and we have to expose our constitution. The entire life of human being in India is built upon the constitutional morality, the liberty, and the individual freedom and equity, the equal space for all people. We have to protect our constitution. Our constitution has to be protected. And this seminar will, I seriously believe that this seminar will expose and which will shower lights into the newer changes happen in our political system. Basically, I am an economic teacher. I was teaching economics for nearly 28 years. My profession was basically economics, but economics and political science is not different one. It's the same thing. All the discourses in political domains, in a way or other way, it's discussing on the economic affairs or economic agenda. But economic agendas are discussed by the political space. So the political science and political thought and economic thought is not different. We have equal shining spaces. With that privilege, once again, I am thankful, Dr. Ranjit, Dr. Subramanian sir, and Shivadasan sir, all the brains behind this new venture, admirable venture. It provides an ample space to make into a space for debating different aspects of this seminar, and the title itself is a highly valid one. The title itself is highly valid. With these few words, once again I thank Dr. Michael sir to acquaint with you. It's an opportunity to you in my life. Once again, thank you all the teachers and students. I declare this session is open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I think our syndicate members, Eugene sir and Hanifa sir, they couldn't log into this meeting, and they already informed us that they will be busy with the election works and all other programs. And now I invite Dr. P. Shivadasan sir, Director of IQAC, University of Calicut, to felicitate this webinar. Welcome, sir.
Good morning all. Good evening, Dr. Michael. And today we have a pleasant exercise of a webinar of this kind, and we are discussing an important issue which is most relevant to India and US today. Dr. Babau, who inaugurated the program, has rightly pointed out the relevance of the program. My friend Dr. Subramanian also spoke about the event in an effective manner. All of us see democracy is in the situation of challenge today, because India and US showed before us the most important challenge that the democracy face in the current day world. So we expect a good turnout from all these problems and chaos, and democracy will show its good face, strengthening the unity of the people and also goodness and social welfare of the people. And we believe that democracy has that sort of power, because history shows that America and India showed how democracy can be utilized for strengthening the bond of the people and also welfare of the people. So we need such a just society. So the University of Calicut and the Internal Quality Assurance Cell is very happy to see that the School of Distance Education is bringing out good programs, inspiring our children, researchers and scholars to explore newer areas and newer problems in their study and research. So we are very happy, and surely this will strengthen the quality of our university, and School of Distance Education deserves a special mention in this regard. So on behalf of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell and also on my personal behalf, I assure you all support, and I thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and I wish all the best for this program. Thank you, Michael sir, and thank you, my dear friends.
Thank you, sir. All we are eagerly waiting for the thoughts of Michael Sonnleitner, sir. So now we are concluding our inaugural session. I invite Fatima Suhara, faculty of School of Distance Education, for vote of thanks.
Good morning, all. Can you hear?
Good morning.
Yes,
Okay. First of all, on behalf of School of Distance Education, I express my gratitude to Michael Warren Sonnleitner, retired professor of Portland Community College, USA, for joining us today. I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. C.C. Babau, Controller of Examinations, University of Calicut, for his inaugural address. I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Subramanian, Director of School of Distance Education, University of Calicut, for your residential speech. I also extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Shivadasan, Director, U.S.A, University of Calicut, for facilitating the webinar. And last, I extend my sincere thanks to all the participants, faculties, research scholars. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, one and all. I think we can officially start now.
Thank you, Fatima teacher. Our inauguration session is concluded, and I invite Professor Michael Sonnleitner for his valuable thoughts. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for such a very, very warm welcome. I am hearing an echo. Do you hear an echo in the technology?
Yeah, some echo is there. Ranjit, turn off your additional connection.
Good? Now yes, it is good. It is always good. I want this to be a great seminar. And it has already begun very, very well with your very kind comments from so many people. Dr. Babau, Dr. Sivadasan, so many people. Thank you, Fatima. And I want to thank especially Assistant Professor of Political Science, Ranjit, who contacted me relating to this opportunity to share, and I am grateful. It warms my heart to be once again in God's own country, Kerala. A few simple comments from me. First, I am sincerely happy to be here. I was in Kerala just last February, where I returned to Mahatma Gandhi University and also to St. Thomas College, Pala, where I had a Fulbright Nehru scholarship to teach 10 years ago. I want you to see how much I think of Kerala. Here is my last visit to St. Thomas College. You can see I was very warmly welcomed, and the people of Kerala are certainly extremely hospitable. You can see here that I also visited Vaikom. The shadow in this picture is me at the Shiva temple at Vaikom, which you may recall in a Satyagraha campaign in the 1920s was opened up to outcast people for the first time in centuries. We must struggle for our rights. We cannot take them for granted. We must move forward to protect democratic principles. About myself, I am a retired professor of 41 years classroom teaching, where I am now a trustee at Portland Community College in Oregon. I am at an institution with 65,000 students, over 4,000 faculty and staff, a budget of over $400 million per year. We are one of the largest community colleges in the country of the United States, and we are the largest educational institution in my small state of Oregon. Oregon has only about 4 million population. Also, understand that I have spent a total of about 2 years of this lifetime in India, Many of you students are perhaps 21, 22 years old. I was first in India in 1971. Most of you were not born. At that time, I traveled for 6 months, meeting over 30 people who had known Mahatma Gandhi. I visited with members of his family and others. I interviewed Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Bacha Khan. I had to travel to Afghanistan to see him. I spent time with Vinoba Bhave. I interviewed Morarji Desai before he became prime minister. So many people. And so my understanding of Gandhi and the fact that I tend to agree with Gandhi about 80% of the time, you need to keep in mind, because while I try to be objective, I cannot be perfectly objective. Before I start my comments, I also want you to know my academic background. The talk that I will be giving today, relating to right-wing challenges to democracy in the United States and India. First, I want to discuss democracy and right-wing. One of my strengths is political philosophy, and I want to be clear about the concepts. Second, I will go into right-wing experiences in the United States. Third, I will discuss right-wing experiences in India. And then I want to conclude some remarks with basically what the challenges to democracy are, kind of a summary, and where can we go from here. I hope that at each of these 4 parts, I can stop and ask if there are any questions. Does that make sense? So this is 4 lectures in 1. I don't want you to just listen. I want you to think, and ask questions. Okay? I also want to be very clear about time. That is part of the Gandhi person in me. It is now 6 minutes past 10 o'clock, your time, in the morning. Please remind me, when exactly would you like me to finish my comments and be completely open to questions? It is now 6 past 10. Do I have until 11:30? Do I have only until 11? Please clarify so that I can pace myself and make sure that you are able to participate. Can you clarify for me?
Ranjit, tell him the time.
Sir, you can continue with your presentation for 1 hour, and we can make a discussion on that for the last half an hour of the session.
Okay, so I will have 1 hour until right about 11 o'clock, yes?
Yes, sir.
And then about a half an hour more to discuss.
Yes, sir. We can make a discussion, and I think our participants are very interested to discuss this topic with you.
And then we will be completely finished by 11 a.m. your time, and you can all go to the canteen that is closed. Or have some lunch somewhere. Very good. Again, I will then be brief about democracy and right wing. This is my specialty area, political philosophy and ideologies. U.S. right-wing experiences I also am very familiar with, though some of you may know more than me. Right-wing experiences in India I am fairly familiar with, having followed your politics for 50 years, but many of you will know more about right-wing experiences in India than I do. And that is why it is important for you to participate. And again, my comments about challenges, summarizing the challenges, I'll try to be brief. So let us begin. First, democracy is ruled by the people. Yes, ruled by the demos. It is a Greek word. Who are the people? In ancient Athens, the people, in quotes, were only about 20% of the population of the city. Because slaves were not people, they were not citizens. Women were not citizens. Visitors to the city were not citizens. And so it is possible in ancient Athens that democracy represents only 20% of the people. The history of democracy I could spend the entire hour on, but I will not. Just understand that many people have different concepts of democracy. I sent to Ranjit a simple sort of graph that I will not spend much time with because of time. But you can see here, maybe you can see, I'm having a hard time, I'll call it up on my screen, that there are three major traditions of democracy. And then there are also, within each of those, three major styles of democracy. So this may be easier to see. You can see that there are organic, conservative, and even fascist types of democracy. By this I mean traditional conservative. Even Adolf Hitler could say, I believe in democracy. He had a centralist view of democracy where he was the representation of the people. Kind of like a king saying, I am the embodiment of the people. I am the people. I represent the people. That's a very stretched kind of democracy. Some conservatives believe in representative democracy, like Edmund Burke, the British thinker, who believed in elections and so on. But Burke would say, I don't represent the people, I represent me. He believed in virtual representation. That's what he called it. And so it is for the people to vote for me because of my issue stands and my honor. And if they don't like what I do, they vote me out. But I am not trying to please them. And then there are some conservatives who believe in participatory democracy. Very, very active at the grassroots level. Maybe similar to the ideal panchayat, village democracy, that doesn't always work very well, but has a long history in India. This is what Vinoba Bhave was hoping for when he was in his Gramdan movement and he was trying to have village rule. There are other types of democracy. Traditional liberal and reform liberal. Traditional liberal is more like John Locke. Reform liberal is more like John Stuart Mill or Franklin Roosevelt. They do not go for centralist democracy, but they go for representative democracy. But representing who? as we will see in the United States, we weren't a whole lot better than ancient Athens when this country, the United States, became independent in 1776 and adopted our first Constitution in 1789. Slaves could not vote, women could not vote, and people who did not have enough property or wealth could not vote. Maybe you didn't know that. But democracy early in the United States was for the few, not for the many. And that has expanded over time. And then there is social or people's democracy, which is more socialist or communist. That can also be very centralist. A Marxist-Leninist might say, I believe in a democratic dictatorship of the working class. He uses the word democracy. And so let us be aware that there are traditions under socialism, and especially Marxist-Leninism, where there's a heavily centralized power, and they call themselves democracy, even if it's a one-party state, and there is no competition at the ballot box. This is the sort of thing that happens in China today. And you're, I'm sure, aware of that. The Chinese Republic, People's Republic, does claim to be democratic. And they are in one tradition of democracy. So let us be clear that for the most part, in India and the United States, we are talking about liberal or social representative democracy, where the vast majority of the population is the people, is included in that concept and has a right to vote. I certainly support that. Gandhi supported that. But it is not the only political theory of democracy. I want us to be clear about that. Now, what is right wing? Right wing is usually either traditional conservative or fascist. And it usually favors a highly centralized form of democracy, if there is any democracy at all. This is common in, I think, the right wing in India. In the United States, we have some of the same. There are traditional conservatives who have descended from the plantation owners, the slave owners of the southern United States prior to the Civil War in the 1960s and 1860s. And they still have this thinking today. And it comes out in a lot of very Protestant right-wing ideological views. We also have another very strange tradition of right-wing in the United States, which I think India does not have so much. And that is called libertarian. They are devotees of Adam Smith, the economist. I'm sure we have heard of him before. And they believe that the government is best that governs very little. The role of the state is to protect private property and only private property, not people. And they do believe in basic rights of freedom of speech, press, and assembly. Yet they do not want government to be involved in providing for health care or even public education. They see very, very low taxes as their ideal and very few reasons for government to be operating. So in the United States, unlike India, we have kind of a right-wing split between old-style conservatives almost wanting to bring the Confederate States back again, bring back a type of slavery, even. And those who are more libertarian, who don't want that, They just want a very decentralized and extremely powerless government. And so we have kind of a schizophrenic movement in the United States of the right wing. Well, in India, I think it is more rooted in the nationalism that comes from British colonialism, responding to that. I'd like us to understand also that right wing does not mean fascist. And too often we use the word fascist to simply talk about people we disagree with. You're a fascist. No, you're a fascist. It's just a nasty word. It needs to be more clear. And in the brief time we have here, I'd like us to think that fascism, which is a word created by Mussolini in the 1930s, where people in society are bound together like straw in a one large kind of staff that is very strong because all the little pieces of straw are tied and bound tightly together. That is the fasces. We are the fasces if we are bound together and able to be wielded by a leader as a powerful instrument of authority. Fascism has four major characteristics, and this will be important if we want to evaluate U.S. right wing, India right wing. Are we talking about fascism? Let us be clear. Fascism includes, one, corporatism. Corporatism, like a corporation, fascists want the government to be organized like a business, extremely hierarchical, with a chief executive officer that you are obedient to. Very hierarchical power structure. And a corporate state was Mussolini's ideal, and this is common to all forms of fascism. Second, irrationalism. Fascism is fundamentally anti-rational. You cannot really understand it. They appeal to emotions. I am the watchman. Vote for me. I am the watchman. And people say, oh, let's vote for the watchman. You understand? It uses a lot of slogans. It doesn't have a great respect for science. They are creating their own truths. And they expect the people to blindly follow them in the appeal to feelings. So in addition to corporatism, irrationalism, there's extreme nationalism to fascism. Extreme nationalism. We might call it jingoistic, where other people are considered to be other and enemy. You are outside of our community. The nationalism doesn't have to be expansionistic. You can have nationalism in one country. Fascism in Argentina under Juan Peron was like that. Fascism in Uganda, which was very anti-Indian, was like that under Idi Amin. So understand, the extreme fascism can be expansionistic, like Hitler, but it doesn't have to be. And last, not least, it is very militaristic. They glorify the military as the saviors of society. They have dramatically increased military budgets because you cannot place a price on security. You must sacrifice other expenditures to have an exceptionally strong military. Well, you can think of corporatism, irrationalism, nationalism and militarism, and use those four to judge whether right-wing movements in the United States are really fascist and exceptionally anti-democratic. Because fascists do not believe in representative democracy. They think a Bill of Rights and personal rights make you weak. And they want to get rid of them. They want to bind you together in one powerful instrument of authority that the leader can use against all enemies. Be aware of that. Now, I will get to U.S. right-wing experiences, but I am concerned if you have any questions. So I'm going to stop briefly and ask, is there anything you would like me to clarify? You can unmute yourself if you want and say something. I'm listening. I am not the watchman. I am the listener.
Ranjit?
Yes? Are we good?
Ranjit?
Sir. Michael, sir.
Yes.
Michael, sir.
Yes?
The participants will ask their concerns or their doubts
end.
in our our discussion session, and you
Okay.
can continue with your lecture.
Well, I will continue, but I want to be understood, because if you are not clear about what I say early on, then it will be very, very boring later.
Yes,
And I don't want to
yeah,
bore you.
right.
Okay. By my calculations, I still have about
Sir, can you,
35 minutes.
sir,
So first,
sir, can you,
yes?
sir, can you give us a little bit of clarification regarding the goodness of fascism? Because what we felt from history is that fascism always turned their eyes against democracy, freedom, equality, etc. But you are telling that fascism is not always that much bad. Can you
Well, I didn't
clarify,
say
sir?
good or bad. What I said is it's not always like Mussolini and Hitler. If you have heard of Juan Peron in Argentina, he ruled, he was elected into office, so also was Hitler. But Juan Peron was a very populist fascist. He was extremely popular among the population of Argentina. Once in power, he, of course, jailed his opponents. He controlled the economy. And actually, he helped many poor people get out of poverty. But he was still very much into running the country like a corporation, like a business. He was appealed to great irrationalism. He was extremely nationalistic, and he built a very, very strong military, which was very militaristic. So we have to be careful about thinking fascism is only Germany and Italy in the 1930s. That's not true. Fascism is alive and very well today. And I would say also in the United States, it is growing. Let me mention something here, even though I'm afraid I'm taking too much time. The Japanese World War II kind of fascism occurred when the corporations grew and grew and grew in power and they took over the emperor. In Germany and Italy, the fascist parties, took power at the top. Took power at the top and then moved down. In Japan, the corporations grew in power from the bottom and took over the top. So I think the Japanese style of fascism is more dangerous today because the power of multinational corporations globally is dramatically on the increase. The gap between rich and poor worldwide is dramatically on the increase, bigger and bigger gap. Some corporations are growing so powerful that they may control countries. That is also fascism. So you might want to look at that with some care. Now, in the United States, I will take 10 minutes. I'll have to be brief. We can have more in our discussion time. There are very deep roots of right-wing politics. But the common root throughout the over 200 years of the American experiment is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males. WASP, W-A-S-P-M. We have a culture that is white, Anglo-Saxon, British. We were British colonies. Unlike India, though, the British didn't colonize native peoples in America. They didn't colonize as they did in India. They created colonies of British citizens. And those British citizens expanded and eventually killed off most of the indigenous people. There were 10 million people living in America before the British arrived. Within 200 years, 10 million were only 1 million. 90% of the population died, either through extermination, war, or disease. It's as if the British came to India, killed off 90% of the population, and then now you are all British. Only you don't like the British rule because of the East India Company. The same problem was in the United States. The British East India Company was the main reason why we had the American Revolution. British citizens in the United States rebelled because of something called dumping. Our economists would know about this, yes? Where they would dump, literally put onto the market in the 13 colonies, tea, tobacco, and other goods below cost. Some of that tea came from India. And they would dump it into the marketplace in the Americas, and the British citizens in the 13 colonies could not make a living. They were being run out of business by the British East India Company. That was the big root of the American Revolution. It was a liberal revolution. It wasn't anti-British, it was pro-freedom, to make money. We wanted to make money, and our attempt to make money was being too restricted by the British. Very different experience than in India. And so we developed from the beginning in the United States with white supremacy. Inspired by the British, we not only killed, of course, most of the indigenous people, but we brought over slaves. And we also limited the right to vote from the beginning. I mentioned that. At the beginning, until the 1830s in the United States, only about 20% of the population could vote, because you had to have a certain amount of property to be able to have the right to vote. Poor people couldn't vote. Over time, democracy grew in the United States. So by the 1830s, people who were poor and male and white could vote. By 1868, freed black men could vote. By 1920, women could vote. It wasn't until 1924 that Native American people could vote. And then, of course, 18-year-olds in 1972. So there was an expansion of the right to vote. This is relevant because many right-wing extremists in the United States want to turn the clock back. First, they want white supremacy, like it was in the good old days, before slaves were freed, before we had so many Asian people coming from China, before we had Latin American people coming up from Mexico and South America. Those people are not true Americans. Those people should go back where they came from. Those people perhaps should have the right to vote taken away from them. So many right-wing extremists in the United States, and a great many of them supported Donald Trump, because his call to make America great again was really translated as make America white again. And he followed through with that, Mr. Trump did, by doing things like having a ban on all immigration of Muslims from 6 majority Muslim countries. Trump came out very anti-Muslim. The right wing wanted a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, not Muslim, country. So he was anti-Muslim, that was great for them. He was anti-immigrant, that was great for them. He builds a border wall to stop Latin Americans from coming across the southern border. That was great for them. He even separates children from their families at the border as a way of terrorizing families to even try to seek refuge in the United States. For many of his supporters, that was great. So the right wing in the United States came out of the closet and had a wonderful time under Donald Trump. Let us just say that that time is not ended. This last election on November 3rd had 65% of Americans who could vote voting. There's only a 65% voter turnout, but that was historically high by American standards. We have a very dysfunctional democracy. Australia gets 85% turnout. America usually gets about 60% voter turnout. 65 is amazing. Well, understand that Donald Trump lost the election, but he also got about 48% of the vote. It is a cause of great concern that he appealed to over 70 million Americans, and about 74 million. That's not much by Indian standards, but that's about 48% of the people who voted, and they considered him to be like a savior. Mr. Modi called himself the watchman. Yes? Donald Trump was, in the eyes of many on the right wing, a savior. He doesn't go to church. He's not much of a practicing Christian. So why should Protestant Christians love him so much? Because he will protect us from the Muslims. He'll protect us from the immigrants. He will protect us from the poor who might otherwise rise up. He'll protect us against socialism. Does this sound irrational? Does this sound fascist? Because remember, irrationalism is a very important feature of fascism. He wanted the country to be organized like a corporation. I'm a businessman. I'm a billionaire. I know how to make money. I'll make a great president. He wanted to organize the country like a business. His tax policies dramatically increased the wealth of the most rich corporate leaders. He spent more on the military than ever before. The United States by itself has only about 4% of the world's population. We account for over 40% of what the world spends on its military. We are heads and shoulders and even kneecaps above the second most high spending country, China. If you had a graph of a person, the Chinese would be literally at about our knees in military spending. And of course, Mr. Trump, America first, America first. Extremely nationalistic. So many were concerned that fascism was flourishing under the Trump presidency. Facts? Facts? It's fake news. Fake news. The coronavirus is fake news. It's not so bad. It's just it's kind of like the flu. That's all it is. He was lying to the American people. He knew that it was worse than the flu. Any news reports against him, he would try to silence by just saying they're fake news, and by intimidation. He would personally attack journalists. He would, on his Twitter account, describe them as stupid, communists, label them. And so, have we come out of that darkness? No. We have not. Joe Biden won the election. But Joe Biden is a neoliberal. Many of his campaign contributions came from big corporations. As he is selecting now the leaders of his new government, many of them come from the corporate world. Mr. Biden is very corporatist. He is very militaristic. He's not going to cut the military. But he is not so irrational, and he is not quite so nationalistic. So I would say he's a little less fascist in his tendencies. But America is still very much in danger of succumbing, of being controlled by the power of large corporations. 5 people in the United States, the biggest of the billionaires, 5 people have more wealth than half of the population of the United States. Think about that. 5 human beings. That is extreme concentration of economic power. And it does impact politics here. India, 10 minutes. I'm watching my clock carefully. India, of course, you know, was a British colony, but it has such a rich history that goes back in time. So it was not difficult for India to have its own national heroes, quite separate from the British. I mean, after all, there was the Mauryan dynasty in Ashoka, 300 BCE. America has nothing like that. There were other empires, as you know, the Gupta Empire in the north, the Chola Empire in the south are examples. Very powerful, organized systems of government. The Maratha Empire of Shivaji. Shivaji becomes, of course, a major hero for the RSS and others. He did successfully reduce the power of the Mughal Empire. You know this. You have your own history. And so basically, right-wing extremists who are Muslims in what was British India do find life in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, to a lesser extent in Bangladesh, formerly East Pakistan. They find it in Al-Qaeda, in the Taliban, and even in the Islamic State. If you follow politics in Afghanistan, you know it's very disturbing how radical, extreme right, Islamic nationalism has very strong fascist elements. Even Buddhist nationalists, oh, this just blows my mind. In formerly British India, we have Burma and Sri Lanka, yes? Burma, now Myanmar, oppressing their Muslim minority, the Rohingya. The Sri Lankans, not long ago, seeking almost to exterminate the Tamil minority within Sri Lanka. So we can see how nationalism has roots throughout the former British South Asian Empire and British India. And in India, of course, Hindu nationalism on the rise. You know better than me, but I am disturbed by the rise of the RSS. You all know that it was founded in 1925. It was explicitly inspired by the brown shirts of Germany in 1922, the black shirts of Italy supporting Mussolini in 1923. In 1925, we have orange shirts. How original. You can see how there are links in history. Certainly, Savarkar, who authored the book, The Essentials of Hindutva in 1923, and was quite an adversary to Gandhi, by the way. They met several times. You may not know that. Would inspire right-wing extremists. I am not saying all RSS people are the same. And yet, there are those in the RSS who even now have called for a final solution for Muslims in India. What? What is the final solution? India has more Muslims than any other country on the planet. More Muslims live in India than in Indonesia or Pakistan. What are you going to do? Send them home? They are home. What did Hitler do? He sought to exterminate the Jews. And I have seen evidence of extremists within the RSS who talk about exterminating Muslims. It can't happen here. It did happen in Germany. Do not underestimate the power of irrational thinking, of scapegoating. And you are the problem. I get rid of you and you and you. You are the problem. We know, I know very much, since I was in India last February and March, I follow the news every day from India, even now. We know of Mr. Modi's policies relating to reoccupying with a very strong force Jammu Kashmir a year and a half ago. What human rights are there when there is no press freedom? For many months, there could be no reporting. But Jammu Kashmir is part of Mother India. We cannot allow a plebiscite. We cannot have a vote to see if they want to stay. Well, that's a political discussion. But if you deny people's freedoms to express themselves on the altar of security, you are in danger of moving more towards fascism. If that's hard for me to be heard, if I'm making any of you angry, I'm sorry. But I, like Gandhi, seek to speak the truth as I see it. And India has its problems. Of course, the National Registry is in danger of potentially taking away a great many people's right to citizenship or voting. And of course, you're aware of student movements throughout the country, mostly now suppressed because of the COVID epidemic. But in January, February, March, at Islamia University in Delhi and elsewhere, people saying, no, you cannot change citizenship, the Citizenship Amendment Act. Oh, well, we'll allow Buddhists and others, Christians, to immigrate to India from Pakistan and from Burma and elsewhere, but not Muslims. You have a similar anti-Muslim sentiment embedded in the Citizenship Amendment Act as Mr. Trump expressed in his ban on people coming from 5 majority Muslim countries. Mr. Modi, of course, won re-election in the spring, a year ago. I did the math. Mr. Modi's electoral base of support throughout India was about 37% of those who voted in the spring of 2019, 37%. India has an electoral system which is very different, but in a weird way is somewhat similar to the Electoral College in the United States, which allows for someone who gets only 37% of the vote to have a landslide victory in Parliament. There may be some need for electoral reform if you want to have a really functioning democracy, where the majority of the population who votes actually gets what they want. The majority did not support Mr. Trump in 2016. The majority of people in India did not support Mr. Modi in 2019. I hope this sparks some discussion. So we have a long way to go. We do see over 10 million people who are members of the RSS now. Again, they're not all fascist, but they are fairly right-wing nationalists, Hindu nationalists. You know that. And even Gandhi talked about Ram Rajya. That phrase has been abused. Gandhi did not want a Hindu state. He favored secular state. That is embodied in your current constitution, a secular state. Gandhi knew, as did George Washington in our country and Thomas Jefferson, that we cannot have an orthodoxy of religion that will oppress others, minority religions. Jefferson was not even a Christian. He wanted a First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution that would proclaim that there shall never be an establishment of religion, that is, no church state, no theocracy. And he proclaimed in the Constitution, First Amendment, U.S., freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. You have many of these traditions embodied in your Constitution, and I'm very pleased to see it. But to have them in print and to have them in reality are two things. It is helpful to have them in print. The courts, as we know, in the United States or India can be very slow in making good rulings. Sometimes the rulings are not good at all. In the United States, in 1917, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Espionage Act passed by our Congress was constitutional. The Espionage Act made it illegal to speak against war, illegal to oppose U.S. foreign policy. That's in America. And that 1917 Espionage Act is still on the books. It's rarely enforced, but it's being threatened to be used against Mr. Snowden, which is why he does not want to return to the United States for possible prosecution. He could be sent to jail for life. We have to fight for our democratic rights in the United States to make them real. You may very well have to fight to make them real in India. I now have 5 minutes. I'm watching the clock. I would like to summarize by saying, first, that clearly right-wing experiences in India and the United States do threaten liberal and social types of representative democracy in both countries. The soil for the growth of fascism has been cultivated, whether intentionally or not, by many right-wing supporters of both Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. I was in India when the two of them met together at Gandhi Ashram in Ahmedabad. Mr. Trump did not want to go even to the place. Modi said, it's a good photo opportunity. We need to be seen together. You know, Gandhi's an important person still, even though we don't much believe in him anymore. We want to show respect for his name. Fascism, how do we combat it? Briefly, we need to decentralize economic and political power, because that is the primary way to fight corporatism, to fight the hierarchy and the business model applied to the state. Decentralize economic and political power. Gandhi would say you need political Swaraj, and you need Swadeshi. We'll discuss those terms if you want. Second, we need a scientific examination of issues threatening our communities and lives. Scientific, rational examination of how to combat the COVID virus, for example. We need to fight irrationalism, because irrationalism, a foundation for fascism, cannot easily be simply denied. You have to fight irrationalism with rationalism, with being reasonable. Third, we need global international awareness of the intersectionality of problems. We have a climate emergency, and nationalism does not erase that. We must become more international in our allegiances to the planet and to one another to fight nationalism, especially jingoism. And last but not least, we need to seek to apply nonviolence with regards to human relationships. That's fighting militarism. We need to think, as Gandhi did, of other means of securing ourselves than through physical force. If you want, we can discuss those options. Gandhi may not be in vogue now. He may not be listened to much. But I would suggest he has much wisdom to share. And Mr. Modi and others do not want you to hear it. A woman who is my age, who was young when I met her in 1971, is now the chief force behind reprinting the entire collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, so that scholars and others will have access to his original works. She has been actively opposed by the Modi government. Actively. When I visited with Dina Patel in Ahmedabad at Gujarat Vidyapit in March of this year, we were watched, she and I were watched by people wearing orange shirts who would sit down closest to where we were eating in the canteen and try to listen to what we were saying, because she was seen as a subversive, not a violent threat to anyone, but in a sense a spiritual threat, because as a devotee of Gandhi, she was making sure that the Modi government plan to control literally the publication of the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi and revise the content of those volumes would not be successful. She was fighting it. She was a danger. As a person committed to nonviolence, she was a danger. So I would like us to all think the preamble of India's constitution, the ideals of a secular democratic republic with liberty of thought and expression, belief, faith, and worship, with equality of opportunity for all. These elements of the Indian Constitution are also in the U.S. Constitution. But we must not be satisfied with their simply being in print on paper. We must make these rights real. I will now stop. 1 minute past my deadline. And I would like to have questions and your comments.
Okay, sir. Our session is open for the discussion. And participants, you can ask questions or your doubts to Michael, sir, by unmuting your mic or putting the questions in the... Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
There are a few comments in the chat box. There are a few questions in the chat box.
Shivasan sir, before that, I would like to ask.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Hello, Michael sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see the
Okay,
chat
sir.
box,
Okay.
so you would have to read the comments to me.
Okay. First of all, I have a personal question, sir. This question is regarding your recently concluded U.S. presidential elections, and the President Trump is not ready to concede. I think now he's ready to concede. And whenever I look into his Twitter account, whenever he puts a tweet saying, okay, this is disputed, this is fraud kind of things, Twitter itself adds a tag saying that, okay, this very claim by the President Trump is disputed. I think this is unprecedented in the history of the United States, and also at social platform like Twitter. So my question is, why a technologically advanced country like United States has a problem with its electoral system? From the news, I understand that there have been bunches of ballot papers being discovered, being thrown on the streets, kind of things. So it's very interesting to know that such a country, in our country, in India, we have 1.3 billion people, 600 million people voting, and we are actually celebrating it as a festival, and no fault at all. So that's a great thing for us to be as Indians, as a democracy, a functioning democracy. Our elections are intact so far. That's my question. Do you agree with the allegations made by President Trump? And there is a following question. As far as President Trump is concerned and his foreign policy is concerned, I have two bright spots, in my personal opinion. Two bright spots are there. One is he's the first United States president to cross over to North Korea from South Korea and to shake hands with Kim Jong-un. And that's one of the unprecedented thing in the history of world. Next one is that now we have official diplomatic relationship between the state of Israel and United Arab Emirates. And if you take the current news, I think Benjamin Netanyahu had visited Saudi Arabia, not officially, it was an unofficial visit, I think in the last week. So as far as the international relations are concerned, I think there is a great contribution from President Trump in the case of North Korea and the case of Israel, United States, United Arab Emirates, and in the coming weeks, it would be in the news that there is a formal or diplomatic relationship coming into force between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so do you agree with that bright spots in the foreign policy of your President Donald Trump? These are two of my questions, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, there were 2 or 3 questions there, but I took notes. So first, do I agree with Trump relating to the election? No. He has lost 30 court battles so far. Leaders of his own party are being embarrassed by him. But the problem is truth decay. I like that phrase, tooth decay. Well, we have truth decay. Gandhi would be appalled. We need to be aware of reality, facts. Mr. Trump labels anyone who disagrees with him as wrong. He doesn't talk about facts. He creates facts. I think he is, frankly, I think he is somewhat mentally ill. And I think Hitler was too, for different reasons. Hitler probably had gonorrhea and was going mad. But Trump, he makes up information in his head, and then there's no disagreeing with him. It's about big things and little. For example, on live television, he was in the Oval Office of the White House talking to the German ambassador. and the microphones were running, and he tells the German ambassador, "Oh yes, my own father was born in Germany." And Mr. Trump, he repeats this 3 times on live television. "My father was born in Germany. I have a lot in common with the German people." His father was born in New York City. How in the world could he claim that he was born in Germany? He creates in his own mind his own reality. I hope that Mr. Modi doesn't do that, because that's a whole different level of serious problem. Now, when it comes to North Korea and Israel, I think it's in some ways similar. Mr. Trump somehow takes a liking to Kim Jong-il, and he's my friend. He likes basketball. He likes Michael Jordan. He can't be all bad. We can make a deal. And he simply goes at it. He doesn't listen to his advisors, even Republican advisors. So he doesn't get any results to speak of, except that Mr. Kim Jong-il, he manages to dramatically increase his stature in the eyes of the world. Israel, Mr. Netanyahu and the Likud party, I do consider to be Jewish fascist. I could make an argument for that. Sounds very strange. I've been to Israel. I've been to the occupied territories. I have gone through the fence. I have seen the occupation. I have risked arrest. And for Trump to get the U.A.E. and possibly moving Saudi Arabia in the direction of normalizing relations with Israel, it's just political pressure. He's a bully. He tries to get what he wants. And frankly, neither the U.A.E. nor Saudi Arabia are particularly good models of democracy. Right? So I find all of this disturbing, and we must speak truth to power. Former President Jimmy Carter described the occupation of the Zionists in the West Bank as being apartheid. He wrote a book called Apartheid. It was like South Africa. The government is making Bantustans out of the Palestinian little pockets of area that are remaining. I think Jimmy Carter is correct. I've seen it. I've seen the pain. I even gave a lecture on Gandhi in Ramallah. These things must be opposed. Sorry that took a little while, but it was at least 3 or 4 questions. Does someone else have an issue you would like to raise?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Fatima, others, I would like to hear from you.
Sir, we have some questions in the chat box. Let me read it. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Question from Josh James. Why U.S. stand against the enlargement of United Nations Security Council? Is Germany and Japan eligible to include in Big Five? That's a question from Josh James.
Well, I did teach international relations. I'm familiar with the United Nations structure. The Security Council, of course, was created in 1945 from the victorious allies of World War II. That was not Germany or Japan. for the structure to change would require the consent of the current 5 veto-holding countries to allow for a new permanent member of the Security Council. Personally, I think that Germany, Japan, India, and Brazil should all be included based upon the size of their economies and their relationship in the international world to power politics. All 4 should be elevated to the Security Council. But they won't be, because the United States or Russia or China will veto it. We cannot hope for a lot of reform in the Security Council or the UN. The structure doesn't allow it. Sorry. I'm only speaking the truth as I see it. Someone else from the chat box?
Sir, another question from Dr. Shivadasan P. Do you think certain elements in USA have a role in supporting Hindutva extremism?
Yes. And honestly, this was new to me. When I was on the Gandhi March, celebrating the 90th anniversary of the Salt March, we began out of Ahmedabad in March. A lot of marches there. And we managed to get 10 days into the march before COVID required the entire thing to be closed down. I'm trying to find on my computer, but a person in the march, a Mr. Peron from Bangalore, informed me about organizations within the United States and abroad that are associated with the RSS, that are primarily Hindu cultural organizations, of course. They are not overtly too nationalist, but they raise a lot of money. And they channel that money, millions of rupees, crores of rupees, to the BJP party. And he would like me to help organize against that fundraising stream coming out of the United States. I myself have been too distracted to devote much energy to that, but it's on my radar, and I may devote some time to it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, right, sir. Ranjit, go to the next question in the chat box. Yeah.
Sir, one more question in the chat box. And the question from Suma MS. And India is in danger as well as democracy here. The MP from Bengal called the present government fascist. Civil right activists and students are in jail without any support from people, media, and law. Is democracy failing in India? Caste and class, dirty politics is reaching its peak. What's your take on this view?
I think the danger is very real. I have seen it myself with members of BJP trying to eavesdrop on my conversations with Dina Patel. I don't know the MP from Bengal. He may very well be a member of CPM. I don't think that that's necessarily bad. The Communist Party Marxist or any of the other communist factions in India probably do see the BJP as leaning towards fascism. For me, it's not a he said, they said issue. Look yourself rationally. Do BJP policies reflect corporatism, irrationalism, extreme nationalism? Do they include militarism, extreme militarism? If those four pillars of fascism are growing, then regardless of whether you're Communist Party, Marxist, or anyone else in background, you may have a strong argument to show concern. Caste and class. Caste is naturally hierarchical. It feeds nicely into a fascist sort of cultural stream. Economic class, not so much, because class can be a little bit more fluid, and also oftentimes fascists, as in Mussolini and Hitler, appeal to people of all classes. Hitler had a lot of support from the upper class because he was anti-communist. See, he appealed to the fears of the upper class against socialism and communism. He appealed to the fears of the poor for being unemployed and hungry. He appealed to everyone's fears and fostered those against Jews. It's very helpful to have someone that you can point the finger at. Michael Sonnleitner is the problem. Communists are the problem. Muslims are the problem. It's part of the irrationalism to gain support by fostering fear. Please resist fear. Gandhi would say, fear is your greatest enemy. Fear. Because it makes you unable to make good judgments. And it can be used to control you if you allow it to. Gandhi called upon people to seek to be fearless. Be willing to die for what you believe, for your truth. Listen to others so that you can learn and grow with your truth. But live well means being willing to die well. That's true patriotism.
Sir, another question from our director Subramanian VK. And his question is, can you explain that in what way and how develop the right-wing trends in China and Russia?
The right-wing fronts in China and Russia. Well, first, I would suggest that we need to be careful about right-wing, left-wing. Stalin in Russia, and those who revere Stalin today, and I would include Vladimir Putin in that category. He doesn't say it, but he wants to be as powerful as Stalin. Stalin wanted to be as powerful as the czars of before the revolution. But it's not just about power. It's about state control. Stalin wanted to have the 5-year plans control the economy. He wanted top-down, centralized, hierarchical control of the state operating like a business. I would say, and Mao Zedong would agree with me, one big reason why Stalin did not get along with Mao was Mao said, you're really a fascist. You're not even a Marxist-Leninist. You're a fascist. In China today, I think Mao Zedong has been largely discredited and thrown aside in favor of a more pro-business, pro-economic growth by almost any means necessary philosophy. So I think in China, while they are allowing for some liberal elements of making money and allowing for people to be millionaires, it's very controlled. They don't want it to get out of hand. And they, of course, continue to operate as a one-party state. And dissent within China, and as you can see, dissent within Hong Kong can be brutally repressed. And minorities like the Uyghur people in China, Muslims, are being sent to relocation camps, separated from their families, and re-educated. Fascism is alive and well, growing in Russia and China today.
Sir, another question from Afifa. How far do you think the Modi government will be able to implement their theories in India? And what is your conclusion on this situation? Do you think the Indian politics can outrage this situation in the coming years?
Mr. Modi has several very, very big problems. First, he is prime minister of what might be called a multinational state. If you study international relationships, there are 18, as you know, at least, major languages in India. The boundaries of the states have been drawn largely on linguistic boundaries. The politics of Tamil Nadu are exceptionally different than the politics of Bengal, and neither one of them are BJP strongholds. The cultural, linguistic, and political diversity of India make it exceptionally difficult for Mr. Modi to really control politics in the entire country. It's more difficult for Mr. Modi in India than it would be for Trump in the United States, because of the diversity and the extreme multiculturalism with which you are blessed. India is blessed. You still have problems, but I am not too worried about Mr. Modi becoming too powerful unless you allow him to be.
Sir, another question from Somesh KV. What is your opinion about rise of Islamophobia in Europe as well as U.S.A?
What is my opinion is that it's mostly very irrational. It's heavily influenced by the experience of the Crusades in the Middle Ages. Europe is still worried about the Muslims of North Africa invading Europe. Anti-Muslim feeling is very strong. Charlemagne, historically, an emperor of what was then now as France, stopped the Moors from invading from Spain into France. He saved Europe for Christianity. This is irrational stuff now. But many see Trump as the new Charlemagne, protecting Christendom in America against the Muslim barbaric hordes. Now, ironically, there are extremist elements within Islam, the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban to some extent. I say that because I have lived in Afghanistan, and the Taliban are a complicated reality. They're more indigenous to Afghanistan than expansionistic. They're not trying to convert people in India. But I think Islamic State, Wahhabists out of Saudi Arabia, and Al-Qaeda are genuine threats, but they're a very small percentage of the Muslim population. Very small. Most Muslims do not believe in terrorism. Muhammad, blessed be his name, totally condemned the intentional killing of women and children and non-combatants. That was entirely unacceptable, anti-Islamic. Islam means peace. I would suggest that Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and those who are inspired by them better read the Quran more carefully, because I consider those groups to be anti-Islam.
So there is no questions in our chat box. And participants, if you have any other questions, you can unmute your mic and ask.
And even though technically our time is up,
Yeah.
I will stay and visit with anyone as long as you like.
And if there is no other questions from the participants, I think we can conclude this session. Subramanian sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, your representation is very, very valuable, and I feel that it's a brainstorming and thought-provoking, and through your explanation and doubt clearing, we could able to understand the problems of right-wing politics, and you elaborated international relations with between among the country in the globe, and you cleared our doubts with encouraging us to think over right-wing politics. We really, sir, grateful to you for your worthy and valuable presentation. We actually enthusiastically hearing your words. So, sir, you were with us this much time. Even at this age, sir, you are very older than us, compared to us. But your energy is, sir, very high. We are very happy, sir. You were with us. And sir, these words, I thank you very much, sir, on behalf of our family, School of Distance Education, Calicut University. Sir, thank you very much.
Well, I am 71 years old,
Sir.
but I was also walking 10 miles a day on the Gandhi March.
Oh, thank
earlier
you.
this year.
Yes, sir. So very nice, sir.
Gandhi is in my room, in my inspiration, and I hope will help keep me healthy for some time to come.
Sir, Very
Thank you.
nice, sir. Very good, sir. Actually, sir. I'm very happy, sir, with your this presence. Sir. Thank you. Ranjit, sir.
Okay, sir. Michael, sir. I think we can conclude this session, and we again express our sincere gratitude on the behalf of School of Distance Education, University of Calicut, and all the participants who are participated in this discussion. And again, our sincere thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you, Ranjit.
And I thank all the participants who are participated in this webinar and actively participated in the discussion. So I express our gratitude to all the participants who are participated in this webinar. Thank you. Thank you.